Aha! Hello and welcome back to RamsTalkPodcast. I pressed start recording and it just didn't record. So here we are after a really, really strong 3-0 win against Burton Albion. It's nice to be talking about good things. Last week was a little bit depressing. So yeah, to come away with a 3-0 win at a ground we'd never won at before was, I guess, kind of the perfect way to kickstart our season. So with me today, I've got three of my favourite people. First off, Mr. Goalhanger, Adam Titley. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. A lot better after that first away win, put it that way.
Yeah, same here, same here. I think we needed it quite a lot. There's a lot of relief going around at the minute. I've also got the ever reliable Vic Singh. How are you, Vic?
Good evening, Jake. I am buzzing. The hype train is back. Let's go.
I did notice as well, Vic, once again, you've been snapped by the Derby photographer in the background of Joe Wildsmith's Instagram post. So, yeah, you're inescapable at the minute, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Lover of Nathaniel Mendes-Lang himself, Chris Matthews-Redwood. How are you, Chris?
Oh, mate, yeah, really good. First night of the season, we managed to get a good night's sleep. Going to sleep with a smile on my face. So definitely worth waiting for that one.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we've got so much to talk about from yesterday, and it's quite weird, isn't it, Adam? That we sort of—I don't think we actually played that well at the start. I think we did well to sort of get the goal when we did. Because we didn't really look great in the first half. Burton sort of matched us quite well, same formation, and they tended to get around the outside of our centre halves quite often. But we grew into the game, didn't we? And the second half was really something special.
Yeah, I think in that first half, it was sort of quite even. I think we created the better chances than Burton at times. I think probably should have gone 2-0 up. Burton could have equalised from a corner, but that was their best opportunity. And in the second half, I felt like we really counter-attacked well, grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck and took it to Burton and scored obviously 2 goals towards the end of the game, but we could have been 4 or 5-0 up, I think, by the final whistle after some of the chances we had. So it was just great to see Paul Warne go attacking at the end, even though we had gone 2 goals up. It was good to see him bring on those attacking players to even go for more and continue the style of play we're playing. Because I think, like I mentioned before we started recording, last season, we would have brought on defenders in that situation, and we all know what happened there. We then equalised late on, and that happened in multiple games. But it was refreshing to see Paul Warne go more attacking when we're playing against a team where we can get more goals.
Well, exactly, and I think, Vic, it's the first time in a long time we've really put a team to the sword. I remember someone in the comments last week saying that, you know, if we take into account our form end of last season, we've actually been in pretty terrible form for quite some time. And I mean, you know, we'll get onto the substitutions later on, but going back to that first half, James Collins' goal, he won the free kick, you know, beat the man. I don't know how that man has let James Collins run past him. Well, he didn't, did he? He flattened him. Great ball comes in, and it's a brilliant header from Collins. And that's the James Collins that we wanted to see.
Yeah, I mean, we've been crying out for that sort of James Collins performance for a long time. I think we all sort of knew that he had it in his locker, but we were yet to see it. And yesterday was probably the complete performance from him. He literally did everything that you wanted a striker to do. He put himself about. He really ruffled their defenders. Put through a good few good balls as well. I mean, he put Mendes-Lang through when he put the cross in for Bird. So he just had a great game. Everything clicked for him yesterday. It was nice to see Collins just flourishing in that sort of role, and he got his goal, well deserved. But like you said in that first half, I mean, if there's any sort of criticism, it was we sort of shut up shop and went back to our usual sort of shape afterwards, where we got the early goal and then we just didn't know what to do for 35 minutes, which allowed Burton back in. But I mean, Collins was fantastic yesterday, wasn't he?
He was, and Chris, I mean, it's amazing what a bit of confidence can do, because I think right at the start of the game, he took a couple of dodgy touches. I remember he just touched one out for a throw-in, and even the Burton fans were sort of giving it the big in towards him. But then the second he won that free kick, second he got that goal, he seemed a different player.
Yeah, and I think, but we've said this all along, haven't we? We've said this last season. We've said it in the first few weeks. He's very much a striker who plays on his his confidence. If he's confident, he will score goals for us. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, we've not seen that enough from him. But I think we're all hoping, because we're going to have to accept, I think, that he's going to be our senior striker this season, that confidence can keep on growing, and that he'll get a few more, and hopefully we can hit the heights that we need him to. Because without doubt, if we're going to keep that front three as it is, he's going to have to weigh in with a lot of goals this season. So long may it continue, James.
I did think for a second, in probably an incredibly egocentric moment, that you called me James for a second. Then I was like, James. But before
Speaking
we
to him personally, because I know he watches it.
Yeah, of course, he tunes in every week, every single week.
Mm.
And before we get on to the other goals and some of the other talking points, we've got a comment from Ryan Jono, who always usually comes up with good stuff. So thank you for commenting, Ryan. He's put good result Saturday. Still think we're short in midfield, but nice to see subs make a difference. And we'll get onto the subs a little bit later on. But when we look at midfielders, we had a little bit of a chat in the group chat about this. Now, I thought Max Bird did really well yesterday. I thought he was probably one of the best players on the pitch, if not the best player on the pitch. And I think Conor Hourihane did really well, took his goal brilliantly. And Adam, it was good, wasn't it? Because Bird sort of played a little bit deeper. We played the two up top instead of the three that we'd sort of seen with him kind of playing out wide. The only one who sort of didn't really impress me too much was Corey Smith. But what did you make of our midfield?
I thought it was balanced at times, which was quite good. I think obviously Hourihane coming forward a bit more, he was linking up the play with his forward passes. And then we saw in the second half when Burton started to tire, it allowed Max Bird to come forward a lot more. I think he could have had a goal with his assist. Corey Smith, I think it was just one of them games where he thought he had a little bit more time than what he actually did against Burton. We knew it was going to be a physical game. They weren't going to give us too much space, and we had to try and pick up the second balls. And it just felt like when the ball did drop to Corey Smith, he took that one too many touches, which resulted in us either giving the ball away or it being cleared out for a throw-in. And I think maybe he suits a game where it's a lot more passive, a lot more free-flowing in terms of how we're playing, moving in the different stages. I think yesterday was a little bit more physical, a little bit more counter-attacking wise, and that doesn't really suit Corey Smith's style. I know I've seen someone comment there that we do need to bring in someone in midfield. Hopefully we do, because I do agree. I think we need someone strong in that middle to hold it down. But I think it was just one of them games where Hourihane and Bird were allowed to come forward a lot more in that second half, which helped us a lot because they resulted in goals when they did come forward. And I agree with you, Jay. I think Max Bird had one of his best games, really came forward and showed how well he can be when coming forward, because in previous seasons, he hasn't been able to come forward as much because he's been seen as that holding midfielder or even that box-to-box midfielder that I know that Paul Warmont's turned him into. But yesterday, we really did see the best of Max Bird, in my opinion.
Yeah, we really did. And again, it's nice to see a player that sort of played a couple of different roles finally really find a role that he can shine in. And Vic, one thing I did notice was if you look back to last season, we played a lot of passes, like a lot of passes. And I had a look at Derby's midfield before we started recording, and they all completed under 20 passes, all three of them under 20 passes in 90 minutes. Don't you think that sums up the change in the style of play under Paul Warne?
Yeah, I mean, it just shows how we're really putting an emphasis on the attacking wing backs and just playing it down the wing and getting the balls into the box, which is why we feel that the midfield gets bypassed in games. I mean, there was a few occasions where Burton did actually play through the middle, and we did look a bit light there. So, I mean, it's nice to see that. I think yesterday was a evidence of how clinical we can be on the counter attack, which was pleasing to see because we weren't brilliant, but we still won 3-0 and we were clinical. It's not often we see Derby be so clinical in front of goal. So the style of play, I think, is starting to click. It's probably in, like as Liam Massini said last season, probably in phase 2 of 200. but we're getting there. It's clicking, and it was a well-rounded performance yesterday, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come with this system, because I think it's very much on the fence with the fan base.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Chris, we saw on Tuesday, I think Wigan was an anomaly because their system was so strange. But when you look at that Blackpool game, they took us apart and they really exposed the system a lot. like a lot. They made us look dreadful. But on Saturday, we looked a lot better, didn't we? And the players seemed to understand things a little bit more than they did before.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good opponent to come up against, because we have to say Burton were very poor. We all thought they were going to be a lot more up for it than they were. But yeah, I think pretty much everything went according to plan yesterday. I don't think Paul Warne could have asked for much more. And it was one of those games where you think, yeah, those players fit that system. I still think we need more players to fit into that system, but it was comforting to see. And as Vic said, 3-0 away from home, that's a great day out. So if that system carries on working, I'm just a bit concerned against the better teams, like against Wigan, like against Blackpool. Through the middle, we're going to get found out.
Yeah, and I guess, Adam, part of that is changes. Obviously, our midfield three, Max Burr's a young lad, but the other two next to him aren't quite as young, and you can tell that both Hourihane and Smith don't have the pace and the running that they had. They put the work in, they try their best, but they just don't have everything, and we do need more players in. One of the things that was noted, Paul Warne's substitutions were great. It worked out. Waghorn set up Washington for the third goal. I hope he gets the assist. I don't know if he's been officially credited, because I think it hit the defender on the way through. But they came on, they combined. It made a big difference. Liam Thompson as well made a big difference in the middle. I guess my one concern is both league games so far, Paul Warne's left his substitutions until the 80th minute. We're playing longer games at the minute. Obviously, all the added time is going to keep going up and up and up. I guess we've got to look at both sides, haven't we? I know we won 3-0. It wasn't a perfect performance at the end of the day. Do you think that better teams might have taken advantage of the fact that we didn't make those subs earlier?
Yeah, I think if we're coming up against like a top six side, like Chris said, with maybe better midfields in terms of being more balanced than we are, and having players suited to the positions and gelled a bit more, then yeah, I think they will do. But it will be a game of tactics when we come up against those top six sides. We'll do things differently to what we do when we're in a leading position and when we're controlling the game against a team that maybe is lower down in the table. But I think in terms of the substitutions, the only logic I can see is maybe that Paul Warne wants the team to really gel in that system, and he's leaving to play full matches up against teams in the division, learning that three at the back with the wing backs coming forward, players coming down the middle for the longest time possible before he brings them on. Maybe he doesn't want players to rely on the fact that substitutions will come on early if they're tired. There's going to be a lot of running in that team. But I think at the moment, the players that he's bringing on, he's brought them on at the right time. I said earlier on, the attacking substitutions were so good to see. I think I can list a couple of games last season where, like Vic said, in the first half, we tried to shut up shop. Paul Warne then brings on defenders, and we concede goals late on to teams that are really putting pressure on us. But to carry on the attacking play that we're trying and bring on attackers, it will mean that we'll put a few more goals in and hopefully secure those couple of points which made the difference last season. So in terms of bringing on substitutions late on, I think at the moment it's just to allow the players that are on the pitch to really gel and see how far they can go before we really do need those substitutions. Also, the players that are coming on are players that aren't really fully match fit. So it might be asking a lot of them to come on maybe for half an hour and really change the game.
Yeah, they're all very good points. And Vic, I mean, when you look at the sort of the system that we play, we've got a comment here from Derby County Fan 32 who's put, I think we're going to end up winning against the lower teams and doing better against what am I talking about? Winning against the teams at the bottom of the league and struggling against the teams at the top of the league. I think one of the things that we complained about a lot last season was the fact that we didn't put games to bed. And now yesterday was very different. And I think against the so-called lesser teams, I think we've got a really good chance of putting games to bed by bringing players on like Washington and Waghorn and people like that. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, the difference is we've actually got a bit of strength in depth this season, and especially in sort of like the forward attacking areas. Okay, maybe we probably 1 or 2 centre forward short, but other than that, the attacking options are there. We can rotate as well, which we couldn't do last season. So it's really important that we do start putting teams to bed. I do agree with that comment, but this was the problem we had last season, was we were pretty decent against the lower teams, and when it come to playing anyone in the top 6, we weren't that great. If we are looking to challenge for that top 2, or even maybe to get into the top 6 this year, we've got to start beating the teams above us. But however, I think now we've got the strength in depth, we've got the attacking options, we've got a system. It's not square pegs round holes. It's now round pegs and round holes, and that makes all the difference. So I think we'll be okay this season.
I was really hoping you'd say round pegs in square holes then, Vic.
I was about to.
I saw you thinking about it. But no, I do completely agree. And Chris, I mean, when you look at the players that we've got, Vic mentioned the strength in depth there. Paul Warren wants another striker. He wants another midfielder. You know, we were linked with Jensen Weir, who's gone to Blackpool, which, you know, I saw some people were surprised that maybe he'd choose Blackpool over Derby, but he's from that way. So that's all I can think is what swayed his decision. But we're clearly looking at players, and this last couple of weeks of the window are really where loans start hotting up. If you were going to get depth in a couple of positions, which would you choose?
I think those two. I think that's what we've seen from the first 3 games of the season. That's where we are still lacking. The jury's still out with me with Corey Smith. I personally think we need one of our signings between now and the end of the month needs to be a central midfielder who's going to start games. You can come straight into it. But they're a premium, aren't they? I mean, we know that the majority of loans towards the end of the window are from Premier League side, Championship sides, from players who aren't going to get in their first team squad, so naturally aren't that match fit. So that's the issue we're going to have, I think. But definitely centre midfield, and I think we all agree we are still a striker with pace short. But time will tell if we can get that sort of player in. And I'm relieved yesterday that I saw reports that Billy Sharp's heading to LA because he's definitely not a pacey striker that we need.
A strikey pacer.
A strikey pace.
No, I agree with you, mate. I think Billy Sharp would have scored goals, but yeah, I think if we want a different dimension, he's probably not the man. Adam, I mean, we've talked a lot about players coming in, but we've not really probably spoken at all about players going out. I mean, we've sold Jason Knight. We know that, you know, obviously when Rossini was building his team, some of those players will be on big wages. We know we had a 12 grand wage cap, and I wouldn't be surprised if a fair few of those are close to that cap. I mean, there's some players that maybe we're looking, you know, maybe they're surplus to requirements. I mean, Tom Barkhazen is probably the most obvious one to me. If you were going to pick some players that were going to depart to make room for ones that could play a real part for us, who would you choose?
It's a tough question, that one. When thinking about some of the players, I mean, I think we spoke in pre-season a lot about Louis Sibley. Where is he going to break into that team? At the moment, I can't really see a position that he could walk into. Even if a player got injured, I think we'd be taking a risk playing him on. Obviously, the positive to Louis Sibley is that he's got a lot of first-team games under his belt, and he's a player that can walk in and play in League One and perform at a level. So I could maybe see him depart. And I know we saw rumours of will James Collins leave Shrewsbury. Whether that had any legs or not is another question, especially not now that he's scoring goals for us. So I could definitely see maybe Louis Sibley departing, probably on a permanent transfer as well, because I wouldn't see the point of sending him out on loan, especially at his age now and what he's already got under his belt. In terms of other players, I'm not too sure. I'm waiting for Tom Barkhazen to come back into the squad. I think he's a top player in this division, especially when he had the purple patch form last season. I thought he was superb. So I definitely think he'll make a break into the squad. My only player that I could really see departing would be Louis Sibley. I know we've talked about Corey Smith not really hitting the ground running so far. There's still a lot of games to go. Obviously, last season he had to play out of position, but then you've got to look at the wages of some of the players and what they'll be on. But I definitely agree with Chris. I think we need a couple of loans coming in, and realistically, we're just going to have to take the punt on them, aren't we? I don't think we're going to be able to get anyone in that's going to be a first-team level playing week in, week out. I think we'd be very lucky to find someone who's that good. It might be another case of bringing in a player like Dobbin or Asula, who's performing well for a reserve side and then comes in and and does have some flashes of brilliance, really.
Yeah, and that sort of feeds quite nicely onto one of Ryan Johnno's comments here. He's put, "What's your opinion on the recruitment team?" With Warren saying that we can't find anyone better to improve the team, and Vic, I think part of it is that financial side. I mean, as I mentioned, a couple of the players that we've got, I'm sure we've got players on big money. A lot of our players came down from the Championship, and I was lucky enough to be on the radio on Sports Scene on Friday, and I was on with ex-Derby manager Phil Brown. I know he wasn't great for Derby, but he's got a wealth of experience in football, and he was talking about when they did transfers, they had 4 tiers. So your tier 1 was come into the team, be one of your best players. You know, this is a player we desperately want to sign. And then tier 2 is, you know, decent first team player. You know what I mean? It'll work its way down to sort of like bench reserves, under 18s, under 10s, and sort of make its way down on that list. I do think that with the wages that we're probably spending already, we've probably got the highest wage budget in the league. We're probably spending more than anyone else. And I think that makes it tough, because if we're bringing more players in, we can't afford to offer them the big wages. So when usually we'd offer someone, let's say 10 grand a week, we can't offer anywhere near that because we've got too many players already on that sort of wage. So I have sympathy for the recruitment team. I have sympathy for Paul Warren. They've clearly lost out on a lot of their top targets that they wanted to go for, probably because of the restriction around us. We can't spend that much more money without significant departures. So I guess what I'm trying to get to here, Vic, is, I mean, Adam said Louis Sibley could go for him. If you were to look at our squads, pick out any player that you think could go to raise a little bit of cash and to free up a little bit more space for new incomings and possibly better incomings, who would it be?
Well, I'd agree with Adam, honestly. If I was to pick a player, it would be Louis Sibley. I think since he broke through, we all thought he was a special player, but he sort of failed to fulfill his potential at Derby, in my opinion. And you could probably sell him for a little bit of cash. I can't imagine him being on big wages, but he's the one that springs to mind. Maybe Tom Barkhausen. I'm just struggling to see where he'd fit in this side, if I'm honest, because he doesn't want to play left wing back. We've already got Forsyth and Elder there. Up front, Mendes Lang is sort of moulding himself into that sort of striker mould. So do we really think Barkhausen's going to take it off him, especially with Collins, Waghorn and Washington ahead of him? So I'd probably say Barkhausen and Sibley if I was looking to sell a player on a permanent. If there's some way we could probably get maybe loan wages off our books, maybe we could send one of the young lads on loan, potentially maybe Jake Rooney. Although I do like him, I'm just thinking if his chances might be a bit limited this season with our centre-back options. So, yeah, I think just Louis Sibley and Barkhausen are the ones that really spring to mind.
I tell you who springs into my mind, who none of us have mentioned, and maybe it's because he scored yesterday for the first time forever. I do genuinely think if we bring in another striker, James Collins might be on his way out. And I know, Adam, you've made jokes in the chat the last couple of weeks about players getting their heads turned by Shrewsbury Town. But I do think if we get another striker in, if Collins isn't our starting striker, I can see him letting him go. What do you reckon, Chris?
Sorry, Jake, you completely cut out then. What was the question? Yeah.
James Collins, do you think he'll go?
He's got to be one of the highest earners, isn't he? I think, wasn't it? I think it was you, Jake. Quite a worrying fact that he's the second highest paid player in the league, isn't he?
I don't think I said that, but yeah, he did come in at a time when we were bringing in a lot of Championship players, didn't he?
I must have been drunk. Sorry, I must have been drunk. But yeah, he must be a high earner. But I think, I don't know. One swallow doesn't make a summer, does it? I don't know if we can bring in someone who's going to make a big difference with the likes of Washington and Waggy on the bench. Yeah, I'd let him go, but I think it would be a real shame because I do genuinely think he's got something to offer. And can we get anyone better?
Well, we'll see. Sam Cosgrove's the latest name, isn't it, that's been thrown into the mix. But yeah, I mean,
would you three say he's better than James Collins?
Probably. He's a lot younger as well. Adam's shaking his head. What do you reckon, mate?
I don't rate him. He couldn't pull his weight in the Championship for Birmingham. He went to Plymouth. It was Plymouth, wasn't it? Yeah, he looked okay there, but I think him and James Collins are probably equal. I mean, Sam Cosgrove went to Birmingham as meant to be their new striker when he left from Aberdeen, and he was pretty mediocre for them. I'm not too convinced. I've heard some Birmingham fans say he's not very good, so I wouldn't be too. Nah, just keep Collins. Keep Collins. He's scoring goals. He's scoring goals. That's all that's needed of him. Score goals. That's all.
Very true.
As much as we love that hype train, Cosgrove tore us a new one last season.
He
So,
did. He really did.
It's one of them. Like it's a catch-22 with him.
Yeah, exactly. I to be honest, I think he'd be a great signing, and if he does sign before our next episode, I think we'll probably do a lot more talking about that. So yeah, wouldn't be too upset with that one. But one of the things we haven't spoken about yet, I guess the collective, is our defence. Now, there was a lot of chat about our defence last week, a lot of chat about our defence in midweek after we got ripped apart twice in about 4 days. But then against Burton, I thought we looked a lot more solid. Sonny Bradley looked really composed, which was great. I thought Curtis Nelson defended so well. And there was one time where I remember he was shielding a ball out of play and a Burton player ran into the back of him. The Burton player went flying and I don't think he moved, which was quite entertaining. And Erin Cashin, as always, looked pretty solid at centre-half. Adam, it's good, isn't it? It's good to see them building. It's good to see that they've got a bit of confidence back. Obviously, Bradley came off at half time last week. And I do think that Wards and Craig Forsyth did really well as well.
Yeah, I think one of the key things is we look a lot better with Craig Forsyth on the pitch. I think that's very obvious to see. I think his experience is coming through, and also his leadership that is there. I think we see that when Craig Forsyth is on the pitch. Talking about Curtis Nelson, thought he was fantastic against Burton. Every corner that was swung in, he was on the end of it, heading it away. I think he's a real presence at the back, especially when we're defending corners and aerial set pieces. Joe Ward, I thought Joe Ward looked more like pre-season Joe Ward against Burton, in my opinion. I think against Wigan, I think he almost rose to the occasion a bit too much and kept trying Hollywood passes for me that just weren't coming off. I still thought he looked good, looked dangerous, but I just think his final ball just wasn't quite there. But I think against Burton, I think he had a lot more of a process when coming forward, and I think he just looked a lot more like pre-season Joe Ward. And I just thought it was great. It seemed to me that the defence was coming together a lot more and playing forward a lot better than what we have done in the past few games, which I think is just great to see. I think defensively we're very solid. I said at the start of this episode, Burton, for me, only really had one clear-cut chance that they should have scored from, and that was a corner in the first half. But apart from that, I don't think they really created anything too threatening to us, which last season when we went to Burton, and I'll keep comparing it to then, but there was definitely a couple of chances where Joe Wildsmith had to save us with some top saves. But I think this year now, we've seen the defence do more of the work, and Joe Wildsmith isn't being called into action as much as what he would usually be in comparison to last season.
Yeah, it's true, and it's nice to see, isn't it? And Vic, I mean, you saw the state of Sonny Bradley's face at the end of the game. I know Max Bird obviously took a nice head to the jaw as well. We've got players that are putting their bodies on the line now. You know, how many Derby teams have we said they're not putting everything in, they're not giving everything? You know, I can think back, I can think of so many. Paul Clement comes to mind, Darren Wassell. You know, we've had some Derby teams that have really not given everything, and the players are fighting for every ball. And yeah, we just look good, don't we? It's nice. I know this is such a far cry from last week, but it is nice to see players sort of fighting, trying to get those results and get themselves back in the right place.
I mean, I think we needed that reaction, if I'm being honest. I think we needed a reaction from the Wigan and the Blackpool game, and we got it yesterday. Everybody fought for the ball. I think in particular with Sonny Bradley, my theory was that because we're playing on a small pitch in a small stadium, similar to Luton maybe that suited his game a bit better. I don't know, but he looked very composed. Nelson, I've said from the beginning, since the first game, I said he's probably been our best centre-back out of the three. If I'm honest, he won everything in the air yesterday. He was very composed, and he's solid, and he can't beat him in terms of a physical battle. But yeah, I mean, it was nice to see the way everybody fought for the shirt. We needed that reaction because I think had we lost yesterday, we all know Derby Twitter can be really toxic at the best of times. So we'd have been worn out and everything like that last night. So yeah, I mean, we needed that reaction. We got it, and hopefully we can continue that going forward. So I'm going to chuck it in. Long may the good form continue.
Yeah, long may it continue. And Chris, one of the things I liked, and Adam mentioned it a minute ago, Joe Ward. I thought Joe Ward links up really well with whoever the closest midfielder was, and Nathaniel Mendes-Lang. I think they got some good triangles going down that side. And I guess I know we sort of touched on it already, but when you think about the team developing, the team gelling, the team sort of learning each other as much as they're learning the division, do you think that sort of, I guess, build up is what Derby will look to use going forward in the season? Because we looked a little bit lost the previous two games, but there was a lot more going on.
Yeah, I think it was one of those yesterday where for quite a few of the players something just clicked, and I do think we're going to get most of our success, most of our joy down the wings this season, because that's the sort of players we've brought in. You know, we didn't bring in Joe Ward to be a right back. We brought Joe Ward in to be a marauding wing back who's gonna score goals. But it just felt yesterday, you know, we haven't won at the Pirelli for ever, have we? I can't remember the last time we
Not
won there.
competitively.
Not competitively. So that was a huge monkey off the shoulder. And yeah, I just think it was the perfect team to play. I'm not going to call it a local derby. I think they try to call it the A52 derby. It's a bit sad. But
A38, but you're not far off.
That's
You've
the
gone
Forest one,
very
isn't it?
much the
Sorry.
wrong way to the A52.
I live near Birmingham. You can let me off that. But yeah, it was one of those games I think everyone needed. Warren needed it. And yeah, I think the way we're going to be playing this season, I think when we're going to play well, that's the sort of style of football we're gonna play. It's not going to be pretty at times, but I think we're going to be crossing the ball in a lot more, and the players like Collins are going to get a lot more chances. We hope.
Yeah, we do hope. We do hope. And now just a quick look towards the two games we've got over the next week. So we've got Oxford and Fleetwood. There should be an Oxford preview that Callum's recorded, which is really good. I've had a listen to it earlier today. So that'll be released just after this episode. So if you're listening to this, make sure you get onto that next. And then, yeah, Saturday, Fleetwood at home. We all know how horrendous that was last season. Can we turn it around? Adam, go on. Give us some score predictions for both.
I think Oxford is the toughest out of the two. No disrespect to Fleetwood there, but I think Oxford have a very good team this season compared to last season. Definitely strengthened. So in terms of my score prediction for that, I'll go the narrow goal anger classic 2-1 win. I think James Collins will be back on the score sheet again, and probably Conor Horan in the same way he was last season. In terms of the Fleetwood game, I'll go with a 1-0, be a bit tighter. I know Fleetwood will be a difficult game in its own way, but I'll go a bit tighter, a 1-0 win. We'll grind it out and we'll get the result, and hopefully 3 back-to-back victories would go down very nicely with me.
Yeah, me too. And I think it'd do wonders for our league position as well. You know, our league position after 2 games. Yeah, we're just in the top half at the minute. So if we can get ourselves up there and keep ourselves up there, that's exactly what we want. Vic, what do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, I agree with Adam. I think Oxford's going to be the tougher out of the two. So I'm going to go for the same scoreline as last season. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win, courtesy of a James Collins hype train goal. And I think with the Fleetwood game, I think Paul's going to remind him how much that hurt last season. And they're going to have something to prove. So I reckon we're going to put them to the sword. I'm going to go 4-1 Derby. We're going to have 4 different goal scorers. I can't be bothered to mention all of them. But we're going to have 4 different goal scorers. We're going to win 4-1.
I usually just mention one player scoring 4 goals, Vic. It's the easiest way. Chris, what do you reckon, pal?
Well, the Fleetwood, that 4-1, Vic, was exactly what you and me said last season. And look what happened there. So I've got to go for something different. I'm going to have to say, if we want to finish in the top 2, these are 2 games we've got to win. Two home games. I'm going to go 1-0 against Oxford, and I'm going to go 2-0 Fleetwood.
I need some goal scorers, Chris. There's not enough goal scorers here, mate.
Well, Collins, obviously.
Every goal.
No, I'm actually gonna go for Fozzie to add to his total and Collins.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And yeah, I hope we're as good as all of you guys have made out. I do think
We're
against
not, are
Oxford.
we?
No, we're definitely not. But again, I mean, against Oxford do look a good team. I think the team will really, really want a win at home. Really, really want a win. So I think we'll win that one 2-0. I think Connor Washington will score his second for the club. I think he'll hit a rich vein of form now. And I think maybe a header from Curtis Nelson as well. He's got to score one eventually, Annie. So I think that'll be that one. And then Fleetwood, I think that'll be a 1-0, really, really tight game. But again, I think it'll be a moment of magic. Conor Hourihane, hopefully left foot top corner. So yeah, let's hope we're all right. Let's hope Derby win the next 2 games and we're here next Sunday celebrating how good we are as a team and how we've got no weaknesses.
Top of the league.
Top of the league. Yeah, you got to be delusional to do this sort of podcast, haven't you? So let's let's hope. All right, lads, cheers for the predictions. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's listened. If you did enjoy, you can check everything out on our link tree, which is now attached to every listening and viewing platform now. Linktree.com/ oh, it's not linktree.com, is it? I don't know what it's called. It's like link.tree or something like that. Anyway, you can find it in our bio. You can find us on YouTube at Rams Talk Pods. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Pods, Rams Talk Pods. Basically, we're Rams Talk Podcast. You can find us with that pretty much everywhere. And if you did really enjoy it, please give us a rating. We've had some really nice ratings recently. We've had a lot of 5 stars, which is class. I'm glad to see you guys are enjoying the content as well. And yeah, make sure you check out the previews for the next 2 games as well. What are you going to say, Chris?
I was going to say it's because Paige hasn't been on.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't want Jamie Page back, please rate the pod 5 stars. So, yeah, nice one. Thank you very much to everyone for listening, and cheers, lads, for a good ep.
Cheers, Jay.
Cheers, Jake.
Okay.